Okay, remember that they're changing my voice. I've brushed my teeth twice this morning, and there's a lot of gunk in my throat, what have you, from all the fumes and the poisons. Now, I'm gonna go ahead and make this video anyway, instead of going way out of my way to try to, clear my mouth and throat more. So, I was at the liquor store yesterday, okay, and I went there at the same time as maybe four bloods, maybe more, probably was about four. Because you don't know what's going on in the parking lot, and they kind of timed it so it went a certain way. Now, recently I had made a video about Snoop Dogg and Eminem and 50 Cent, which I eventually took down incidentally after that incident, but not because of that incident. So far, the Bloods and I, you would almost say we have an understanding or something. We are coexisting, right? And I've come across one Crip, and I've probably come across maybe, I don't know, maybe around 10 Bloods, 12, 13 Bloods since I've been here. Okay, one or two here, one there, 4 or 5 there, what have you. So Southfield is kind of a small town, and whether or not I live in the Blood territory or not is of little consequence because the way I move around. Now, the people who are pulling strings behind the scenes, white, Jew, LGBT, token minorities, really, especially the English and the Jews seem to get a kick out of trying to act like they're superior, trying to act like they run things and getting people to listen to them, so on and so forth. And so this is why I'm making this video. This video absolutely connects to the incident with Rihanna, okay, where Ortiz was this female who's an attractive female who did the shooting. And the reporter's name, in the video I saw, her name, it should be on the screen, her name was Karma Dickerson. Remember, I've been talking about occult wordplay for a long time. All these names that people are seeing on the news, they're first and foremost about this case here. And so she had on a red shirt, and she was attractive, and there's a bunch of females, there's black females that are pretty good looking here in some of the places that I go. And whether or not they smile at me or they act, bothered or whatever, has to do with the videos I'm making, what I say. And so they're trying to kind of leverage that. Same thing with the police, whether they kind of act more polite or they seem like they're irritated and they pull someone over acting, bitter to kind of send a message to me. Depends on the videos I'm making, how they're orchestrating. This has to do with technology. I've been talking about brain hacking technology for a long time. Popular Science did an article some years back, maybe 5 years ago, 6, 7 years ago, that was called The Mysteries of Mind Control. And it was talking about things that are connected to this, but they're not as advanced as the things that have come out recently in the news. And I've been ahead of it consistently here, telling you that this is what's going on and they're using in this case, and then several years down the line it comes out in the news, what have you. So anyway, let me talk about the incident with the Bloods at the liquor store. So I'm with my father, okay, and he's a very old person, and he walks with a cane, what have you, disabled. I'm partially disabled. And so as we're walking up to the store, okay, there's a person who looks like an older Blood. He has a red vehicle. I'm not going to tell you what vehicle it is. I'm not going to put too much information out there. You got to give people some kind of respect. And so he's backing up into the parking space, and I thought that was out of the ordinary, right? So he's backing up into the space, and they usually send me a message that way. They say, hey, who's going to back you up? Because as I'm standing firm, because other people follow the state, they follow the occult system, they follow secret societies, what have you, that they don't really kind of take my side. They're not walking down the street with me, what have you, like I would be having if they gave me my rightful place, or if people were rallying to me, what have you. So I don't have that kind of entourage. We'll get into that, why that's significant in a moment here. And so the person kind of lightweight looks over, and I'm a very humble guy in public. I'm humble but deadly. So I see him kind of turn his head a little bit, but he's not really staring hard, so I can see he's giving me some kind of respect. He's not kind of staring hard as some of these gang stalkers are. And there's also a disabled gentleman who's a white gentleman in a wheelchair, and he kind of pauses by the ramp for a second. And it's like, man, he's timing it so that he's going to kind of collide with me at the door or something, right? It's going to kind of be an awkward moment of who goes in the door first. I hate stuff like that. And anyway, so he goes up the ramp, right? But he's pretty respectful initially. A lot of times there'll be a moment where they have like this way of respect about him, and there's a moment that they have a way of being irritated, agitated, whatever you want to call it, and that has to do with the brain hacking. Okay, so what happens is, the gentleman with the wheelchair goes in first, and I'm surprised. It's like the door has an automatic button or something. It like seems to open for him, and it's not clear why that is. I guess it has an automatic opener or something, and he kind of goes through, and he's kind of got his hand on the door to make it more confusing. So I'm a little confused going in there about the whole situation. And in my subconscious, hey, there's this blood behind me, and I'm not like turning around super tough because I'm not some kind of bitch or something. Okay, so I walk into that thing, even though with my dad, you might argue I should be extra cautious. I played a certain way, I play the windows, the reflections, whatever, I kind of sense the energies in the air, which when you're brain hacked isn't a perfect way to kind of have your back, right? So I come in there, right, and I can't remember if they went in there, they were there already, but I think, no, they came in there behind me. So if I'm not mistaken, these bloods come up on foot, right? One of them has a red shirt on. He's a pretty big guy, kind of shorter gentleman. Other one has like a black shirt, got a tattoo on his arm, what have you. I don't want to get too into details, I'm not gonna say where in the arm, but I want you to kind of picture the situation. And they're both about the same height, and they come in like right behind. So now I'm like, okay, now I didn't remember at this point. I didn't remember the the video I made about Snoop Dogg and Eminem. He was from 8 Mile, what have you. And over here, in Southfield, there's streets like 12 Mile. Okay, so it's like, it's not that far from 8 Mile, maybe 10-minute drive, 15, depending on traffic and what's going on the freeway, what have you. I think about 10 minutes or so. So we kind of have like an awkward moment, right? And it turns out the older gentleman, who's a blood, or at least I perceive to be bloods because they had this very textbook blood way about them. But it could very well be that it's another gang of people that wears red or something. But I'm pretty satisfied that they're bloods, and especially because when I was at Burlington Coat Factory, I noticed that there were. I think I brought this up in one of the first videos I made when I was out here. I noticed there was a coat that was like a red bandana design. I'm like, man, why would Burlington sell a coat with a red bandana design? And then there was the kind of coat that would be worn by Nipsey Hussle or something that was like white and blue. And there was several of those red bandana design coats, and they were for shorter gentlemen. Jews tend to be shorter, and that's part of the message they're saying. They're saying, hey, there's more bloods than there are Crips out here. But again, I'm not a gang member, right? I gave up all ties to gangs because I used to hang out with gang members. I was always the voice of reason, more of a revolutionary, what have you, back in 2015. So I'm standing in line, with my father, and I believe those guys who came in afterwards beat us to the register, right? Yeah, I believe they beat us to the register. So then this hot black chick, I guess she was with the bloods, the older blood, she kind of stands right next to me, okay? And I kind of look at her once, and she kind of smiles like in a kind of goofy way, right? So they told her to kind of be flirtatious, right? And I kind of look away, and part of me is like, man, she's hot. And I'm like, I want to get a good look at her, because I don't really see hot chicks all the time. So, I've kind of like a prison effect where I've been in an open-haired prison, is how I would describe it, for many years. And then we came out here, I was fumed, and my condition keeps me from going out at certain times and so on and so forth. So when I see a hot chick, it's like I have a certain inclination, especially when my brain is being hacked, to kind of look. So I turn back, and I look at her again. She kind of starts acting like very flirtatious, right? And something tells me to talk to her, and then something really tells me to not talk to her. And so then the person who owns the store calls my dad up to the register. And, I want to kind of stand there for another moment, and I'm still like conflicted about whether or not to talk to her. But, it was like a bad idea. She's like, hood trained, what have you, hustler, what I'm saying, into the occult to some degree. You might say witch, crafty, quick-witted, I'd imagine, clever, probably a player. So I go to you know, to the register with my father, and he plays the lotto. I don't. It's sad that he does, and it's something the CIA put him up to or something. He keeps playing, and he keeps losing money, trying to play the lotto. So they direct him to the other register. So these little things in a situation like that could lead to, you feel me, could lead to conflict. So then, the Bloods are standing in line, right? So now I have to walk past them. And they kind of take a step back, they see what's going on, and the guy kind of gives a gesture of respect, you feel me? And as I'm passing by to show respect, I kind of say, I say, excuse me under my voice. I don't want to say it too loud because I don't want to address him, because that can also start a conflict. If I just say, if I said, excuse me, like loud, or my tone of voice might sound a certain way. They do something with the tones of voices, right? So I didn't want him to be like, what? Like, and now we have an incident. So, but he was already kind of acting a very kind of respectful way, very polite way. So I kind of say it on my breath. And so as we're walking out, and this connects to the Karma Dickerson female. That has to do with that. Ortiz was the shoe. So it's Karma, right? Car. I'm trying to sell my car back in California, through my family, what have you, back there. And that connects to that to some degree. I'm running out of time. I'm running out of space on my phone. Let me just wrap this up here. So, we buy the lotto tickets, whatever. A couple Bloods, they're on foot, right? So they live in the same area as I do. And I won't say why that is, but I will say that, there's Bloods that live in the area that I do. There's Bloods that live in my neighborhood, and they live sporadically throughout the city. It's almost like it's a blood city, but I don't think it's that simple, because I also seen a Crip, at one of the places I often go. And he kind of raised his hand by my face. I wasn't moved in the slightest, martial artist, and then he kind of bowed. He kind of smiled and bowed, right? So there's stuff like that going on anyway. So on the way out, he's feeding he's pouring some water on the ground for his dog. I thought that was kind of weird. I'm like, why do you pour some water on the cement for his dog to lick up or something? He has like this smaller dog with him, right? And I forgot to, while we were in the liquor store, some two other guys, kind of Detroit themed guys, kind of a little bit gayish, were walking in like a menacing fashion, okay, with a kind of gay energy. And that was a warning from the LGBT community. Whether those guys saw it that way or not, they were saying, hey, we are very much involved in the politics here, in the gangs, what have you. So anyways, we're walking out, and my dad decides to talk to him. I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, don't talk to this guy, not because that guy didn't seem friendly or this. I'm like, look, this situation is a little bit precarious, right? I'm like, and my dad's kind of older, has cognitive impairment, and so, he was already talking to the liquor store guy in a certain way. And okay, so now I took a shower, washed out my mouth a bit, what have you, cleared my throat a bit. And so I should be sounding different. I don't know if they'll change the sound in the future. And that's another thing that kind of subtly provokes. There's a lot of things like that subtly provoke, okay? And so anyway, I was at the part where we're outside the liquor store. The bigger Blood, is kind of crouched down, giving his dog some water. The other guy, he's wearing like black, he walks around to my right. And there's this kind of awkward moment of, okay, you don't know me, I don't know you, what's gonna go down right here kind of thing, right? And then he kind of smiles a little bit, kind of laughs. And it's hard to say if it was more about the dog or the situation. And the guy's being very polite to my father. Okay, so we take the long route home, what have you. Okay, and I don't want to get into a lot of detail why that is. It has nothing to do with trying to avoid trouble. So, when I get back to the pad, I decide to, to start, to take off on my own. And, at that point, I forgot to mention, the whole time at that point, I was wearing my boots, I was wearing 2 sweaters and that gray jacket I've shown you in a different video, where it's like only 70, it's 70 degrees outside. It's not that cold. Okay, so, that one guy had like a sleeveless red shirt on, right? So it's pretty warm outside. But the reason that is because I was so used to wearing it, and I don't quite understand the weather in Michigan. And my father also, he kind of, again, he has cognitive impairment, and so he kind of wore his jacket. We're kind of in the habit of wearing it. So we look kind of out of the ordinary, right? And going to a liquor store dressed with that much clothing when it's warm. But the liquor store people there, they know me, okay. And again, that dude, the younger guy there, he kind of put up his head, and he's an Arab or he's Iranian or something like this, right? I guess they're speaking Arabic, so I guess he's not Iranian, because Iranians, I believe, well, they speak various languages. One is Farsi, so, but he looks very much like an Iranian person. And in Southfields, there's an Iranian consulate or what have you, even though it's a small town. I don't think that's a coincidence. So they're kind of playing different angles, right? They're playing, there's an English flag flying in the city somewhere. There's American flags. There's, an Iranian community, Armenian. There's various factions of the black community, and so on and so forth. So they're like playing this like game of, be careful what you say, this, that, and the other thing. But you know me, I'm a straight killer. Even if everyone's against me, I'm going to keep pushing that line. But a lot of these guys, they don't know what's going on, what have you. And if they knew a lot more about what's going on, they might very well take my side. That's a little harder to understand. So anyway, so I take off on my own, and I'm going by the park, okay, where, I've been to this park regularly. I'm not going to say why that is. And there's somebody who, at least in terms of the game, identified themselves as a blood gang member to me that lives by the park. Okay, and I'm going to be going to that park and these other parks in the area quite a lot. And I'm not like, okay, I'm not tripping. I grew up with Bloods and Crips and Norteños, okay, but a lot of Bloods, they don't like Crips, and some don't accept the argument that you're no longer a Crip. But I don't foresee that, I don't anticipate that being a problem here. I anticipate things going pretty smoothly here in terms of the black community, okay? In terms of the Jewish community, trying to incite them, trying to entice them into Satanism more than they already are in. Okay, yeah, but again, some Jews, they're more cordial than others. Some Jews have bowed to me. Some Jews have walked by me in a very humble manner, and that's why I'm bringing up this incident here. So I'm walking toward the park. I see a bunch of people there. They're playing basketball. Because of my condition, I can't get too close to people because sometimes they fume me and the noise will mess me up. There's things like that go on, right? They fume me consistently. Sometimes they fume me more than others to where the noise will cause me to have problems. Back in California, I had to check a Jewish person. Again, I'm not racist. I'm just kicking the ballistics here. There's Jews in my family. I'm not anti-Semitic or whatever. I had to check him because he slammed a bottle into a trash can and looked at me hard, showing that he was aware that was going to mess with me. So I hopped out, pulled out a knife, what have you. Okay, I'm not a violent person, but I had to communicate, look, if you're going to cause me pain subtly or otherwise, you're going to know what you're doing, okay, then I'm going to have to kind of address that. You see what I'm saying? And I'm a straight killer with a knife. You could shoot me 3-4 times. If it doesn't kill me, I'm charging you and stabbing you up, you're dead. So, things are a lot more equal than you think they are, and I'm not evil, okay? I'm fully aware of the situation, right? Cops can outnumber me, gun me down. Bloods can outnumber me, gun me down. Jews, get in some kind of fanatic state of mind. Okay, Muslims can say he's insulted our religion or whatever, right? Like, I get the situation more than people think. But again, I'm Jesus. I'm not trying to threaten people or boast or kind of put my chest out and act like a bully or something. But I'm not going to be moved. You feel me? And to whatever the righteous man would think about anybody or any situation is what I think. The Bloods in my life have shown me a lot of love. I've had a little shade thrown at me back in California, what have you. But, they've shown me a lot of love, and I don't anticipate that being a problem. I anticipate that love kind of carrying over. I anticipate whatever love the Jewish community has for me carrying over and all. So it's not like it's a super hostile environment, but make no mistake, this is in the greater Detroit area. As I'm told, Southfield used to be part of Metro Detroit or something. So, or whatever the hell that phrase means, Metro Detroit, I'm not quite sure. But one way or another, it spills over. The gangs spill over. Okay, Southfield, from what my understanding, doesn't have that high of a homicide rate, but the gangs do spill over. And when you're targeted, and it can turn into a problem. But again, I'm not concerned about that. I'm not afraid. The Bible says the fear of man will prove to be a snare. Some of these females out here, they're not playing. So you might think, okay, a bunch of blood guys. Some of these chicks out here are not playing. Some are quick on the trigger, tough females, tough, strong black women. Not fucking around. And, I'm sure the police department has people like that too, former military, what have you. And again, I'm not praising anybody because I don't approve of everyone outside the divine order, right? But whatever the righteous man thinks about the situation is what I think. And there's a lot of situations, so I got to kind of, cut to the chase by saying it that way. And I got to, wrap this video up. I just deleted a bunch, like 500 pictures I didn't want to delete about old cases that I want to review time and time again on my phone. The Marissa De La Poli case back in Morgan Hill, what have you. And I'm not a big fan of that, but I am kind of relieved that I have a little more space on my phone now, And Yeah. So I want to emphasize that it's not cool that they control reproduction, that they try to script things, right? And they talk about scripture in the Bible, Old Testament, the Quran. To some degree, that's considered scripture too, right? There's a book in the Bible called Acts, and a book called Numbers, and these things connect, right? It's organized religion, the religions that the state allows, whether or not they quote unquote crack down on them or not, like Christianity, New Age, Islam, Judaism, Hinduism, okay, and so on and so forth. They are like witchcraft centers. To some degree, they feel a certain type of way about God, and they have, a kind of checkered floor look on it. They basically worship the devil, and they split him into two, Lucifer and the devil. But in the midst of that, everybody, um, everybody fears God to some degree. You know what you call someone who doesn't fear God, whether they call themselves an atheist or not? You know, insane. That is crazy. Like, why do you think you're here? Do you know what, if I was a psychiatrist, I would say, do you know what day it is? It's part of what they say, if you don't know the date, that's okay. Sometimes I don't know the date. It's normal, right? Do you know what your name is? Do you know who the president is, right? Do you know that you're on a planet in orbit around the sun? And the most logical explanation for why that is that there's a God. And people need to respect that. They should respect God. They should respect me, what have you. And I'm not like, again, I don't have anything against the Bloods other than their rebellion. Whatever the righteous man thinks about is what I think about them. I'm hoping to work with them and everyone else in this city and everyone else in this country and this planet in the future. I don't think it will happen because I'm skeptical, pessimistic, cynical. I have faith in God, not in man. But I would, I'm hoping to look forward to um, working with these people in the future for my war on poverty plan, working with the local leftists and the rightists. This is a battleground state. We don't have to, be fighting with each other literally or otherwise. We can sit down like gentlemen. We can hash out the details. We can end homelessness. We can improve the economy. We can work on the housing. We can work on the food programs. We can make sure that, people in a small white town in Michigan feel secure that their town's going to stay that way and so on and so forth, while improving the communities of color and making it so that we have improved relations, what have you. Thank you. Well, really quickly, sometimes, I kind of calm down after I make the video because they do something with the frequencies, so I'm kind of high strung. It throws me off. They try to make it so I sound bipolar or mentally ill or weird or gay and so on and so forth. So I forgot to finish off the story at the park, and I forgot to tell you why I took down the video that was like a minute and 30 seconds or something about Snoop Dogg, Eminem, and 50 Cent in the video Run. Okay, so when I was at the park, there was this chick. I guess she had yellow shorts or something, or gold shorts or something. And she was very attractive, and she was like, she was a Jewish female. She was pretty forceful. I perceived her to be attractive because she was kind of far away, And she was staring at me. I could feel her like energy. She was staring at me like she's in charge there, and watch what you do or something like that. Because in that park, I've made a video there before. I intend to make videos there in the future, and there's that, right? And so that was that kind of story. At one point, I passed like a gay gentleman. I stepped to the side when I was with my dad on the way back from the store, not when I went to the park myself. Okay, when I was doing that, they were slowing down the video uploading anyway. So I stepped to the side. He kind of gives me a little head nod, and I kind of give him a head nod back, right? And because the way the streets or the sidewalk is, it suggests you need to step to the side if this, that, and the other thing. And I'm like a humble guy. I don't take that as a sign that people are above me. I'm polite, and I'll kind of hold the door open for people. I'll step to the side, what have you. And, it's kind of the difference between a bully who wants to throw their weight around like Caesar in Rome or some, everywhere they go, or captain of the guard saying, step aside, and somebody who's humble, even though I'm Christ. Now, and I don't expect people to step to the side for me. I'm just pointing that out to kind of clarify that. Now, in terms of the Snoop Dogg video, what had happened was I was kind of fumed heavily, what have you, and I felt that I went too far because I had said something about 50 Cent betraying his family. I'm not going to say what it was, and I said it in a way that is a little bit out of my character. I'm not afraid of 50 Cent, not afraid of anybody, but I didn't want to I don't cause conflicts over something that I don't think that I should be fighting and killing for, right? And being ready to die for. So I decided to take that video down. And I have another video where it's like a 12, 13 minute video where I talk about the video that they made. It said called Run. And notice I'm wearing the boots. Oh, I forgot to mention that I have these blue shoes that are basically considered Crip shoes. Okay? And they mess up my clothes and my shoes, so they make it so I can only wear certain shoes. And so, The snow will ruin your shoes, so I wear boots. I'm used to wearing these boots, and the snow is kind of receded. It's like the end of winter. My mom told me the winter ends, and it has something to do with the equinox, right? It ends on March 20th, according to her. And so, what shoes I got to switch back to? There's some substance on the ground here where I have to wear these old dirty white shoes that I can't wear outside. They can fall apart any time. They're very old. And I wear them so that the substance on the ground doesn't mess up my body more than it does. They have substances that compromise the integrity of your body structure and make you more vulnerable to blows and slips and accidents, right? But again, don't be afraid of them. Be afraid of failing the test. That's just a part of the test, like working out at the gym, like running an obstacle course or jumping hurdle, doing the hurdles on the track, what have you. That's all that is. Move masterfully, think wisely. Let their obstacles refine your thinking. Don't shrink from the test. Don't shrink to fit. Rise to the occasion. Now, so I have these yellow Pluma shoes I want to wear, but I probably can't wear, and I'm not a big fan of them getting dirty. Might have to walk on the grass at the park. I often can't sit on seats in public at restaurants, at the park, what have you. So I'm kind of, I'd like to be at the park reading some scripture, making videos, kind of letting people see me and hear me and ask questions if they feel inspired to. But I'm probably not going to be able to do so, especially when they fume the area quite often and they deny me areas with area denial weapons that are designed for domestic psychological operations, military grade psychological operations. So I have these other white shoes that are white Cortez. So I got two pairs of Cortez, the brown boots, okay, and I got the yellow Puma shoes, which are kind of more associated with lesbians and females. But I like that they're yellow. I like their style. They're close enough to my style, but some people might not respect it. So these are the kind of dilemmas and provocations I face, and there's lots of there's lots of things that come up here and there. I see on YouTube that rub me the wrong way. Okay, they provoke me all day, every day. I really should get the Nobel Peace Prize. I'm 44. I have no criminal record. Okay, I've moved so masterfully through life, through sabotage, and they try to make it so I look like an idiot, a clown, a buffoon, a dumbass, somebody who just doesn't even know how to dress himself at 44, right? Because they deny me certain clothing. And, gangsters and a lot of females and a lot of people out there are snappy dressers. They dress sharp. They judge people based on that. It might cause problems in the future with people running their mouths. I was at one store, someone said something to the effect of referring to my clothing, and, it didn't really cause a problem. I'm not necessarily going to take off on somebody for saying that or something, but in terms of takeoff isn't beat up that person, but I certainly don't appreciate it when people say those things. And yeah, I'll leave it there. I went way over time in this video. Hopefully that the phone doesn't start acting up and it lets me copy it over, so I'll end it there. Minor correction. I don't want to have to edit the video more than I'll have to do already. When I said I pulled out the knife on the Jew, I really put the knife on the seat in my vehicle, and then I popped out the vehicle, and I kind of stood in a very confrontational way, and he kind of drove away, staring at me, trying not to kind of be afraid, but he knew that he couldn't. That was a battle he couldn't win. He probably didn't know about the knife. I want to kind of clarify that there for various reasons, including legal reasons. And of course, it's something I wouldn't have done if he was just staring at me for this, and this. I was 100% sure, and I am 100% sure, and government workers have agreed with me that he did it on purpose. He was told to do it or something. And, yeah, to some degree, I am fighting for honor. If people go too far in a certain scenario, okay, I'm likely to be willing to fight them and to kill them if needed, okay? Um, more or less within the boundaries of the law, right? I don't just get offended and just rush somebody and that's that, I'm not somebody with like a prison mentality, okay? But in a world full of demons and Satanists, where people are breaking the law, where law enforcement plays stupid, where there's no justice at all, where I've been targeted for years and years and years and not compensated and partially crippled, okay, it doesn't pay to just take it like a slave getting flogged all the time. I confront back, I retaliate in a way that's logical and moral and fair and just and right. Thank you.